Where did you get that necklace?
From the woman you called a thief, the woman you abandoned, and from the people your signature is about to make homeless.
Remove that dirty girl from my gate. The security officer grabbed Kesanre by the arm and dragged her down the marble steps as workers gathered behind the glass doors, laughing and recording with their phones. "I said I need to see Mr. Alade," she shouted, struggling to keep her torn blouse closed. "Before his company destroys another 100 homes." "See this mad beggar," one receptionist mocked. "You think CEO Day wait for people like you?" Then the chain around Kesanre's neck snapped into view. A small silver pendant swung beneath the morning sun, 2 hands holding a tiny house. At that exact moment, Babatunde Alade stepped out of his black Range Rover. He saw the necklace and froze. His briefcase slipped from his hand and crashed onto the pavement. 20 years earlier, he had placed that same necklace around his wife's neck. There was only one in the world. "Ibiwari," he whispered. The laughter died. Kesanre turned slowly, blood running from where the guard's fingers had scratched her skin. "She said you would recognize it," the young woman said. "But she warned me that recognizing jewelry is easier for you than recognizing the truth." Tunde's face drained of color. "Where did you get that necklace?" Kesanre reached into her battered bag and pulled out a sealed envelope. "From the woman you called a thief, the woman you abandoned, and from the people your signature is about to make homeless. Do not leave this story halfway, because what was inside that envelope would tear open a 20-year-old lie and bring one of Lagos's most powerful families to its knees." Before we continue, tell us in the comments where you are watching from and your local time. And subscribe, because the truth this homeless young woman carried was far more dangerous than the necklace around her neck. The air outside Alade Meridian Developments seemed to lose its sound. Cars still moved along the road. A hawker still called out bottled water in the distance. Somewhere beyond the company gates, a bus conductor shouted for passengers going to Oberlande, but inside the compound, everybody stood still. The security officer's hand remained locked around Kesanre's upper arm until Tunde looked at him. "Leave her." The officer released her at once. Kesanre rubbed the place where his fingers had pressed into her skin. She did not cry. That unsettled Tunde more than tears would have done. "Bring her inside," he said. Chief Security Officer Bamidel lowered his voice. "Sir, we have not searched her properly." Tunde turned. The look on his face was enough. "I said bring her inside." The glass doors opened. The same receptionist who had mocked Kesanre moved aside so quickly that one heel caught against the polished floor. Nobody laughed now. Kesanre entered the building barefoot on one side because the strap of her left sandal had torn during the struggle. Mud marked every place she stepped. Her blouse was faded. Her skirt had been repaired at the hem with thread of the wrong color. The battered canvas bag hanging from her shoulder looked as if it had survived rain, dust, and several nights on hard ground. Yet she walked with her chin raised. Tunde led her past the main reception and into a private boardroom used for high-level negotiations. The room had a long table made from dark wood, leather chairs, a wall-sized screen, and a view of Lagos through glass that made the city look quiet and manageable. Kesanre stopped by the door. "You can sit," Tunde said. "I am fine." "You are bleeding." She glanced at the scratch on her arm. "I have had worse." Tunde's jaw tightened. He turned to Bamidele. "Call the clinic." "No clinic," Kesanre said. "This is not a negotiation. Everything in this building seems to be a negotiation." Bamidele looked from one to the other. Tunde pointed towards the door. "Leave us, sir." "Out." When the door closed, Tunde placed both hands on the table and studied the necklace. It was not silver, though the morning light had made it appear so. It was white gold, slightly dulled with age. The pendant was shaped like two open hands holding a small house. There was a tiny scratch across the roof. He remembered that scratch. Ibiwari had made it on the day they first opened the community library at Okoawo. She had leaned too close to a freshly installed metal shelf, laughed when the pendant struck it, and refused to let him replace the necklace. "A house that has never been scratched has never sheltered anybody," she had said. Tunde had forgotten the exact sound of her laughter. He had not forgotten the necklace. "Take it off," he said. Kesanre's eyes hardened. "Why? I need to see it. You can see it from there. That necklace belonged to my wife, your ex-wife." The correction landed sharply. Tun straightened. "Where did you get it?" "She gave it to me." "When?" "Before she died." His breath stopped for half a second. "Ibiwari is dead." Kesanre did not answer immediately. For 20 years, Tunde had trained himself not to ask about Ibiwari. He had told himself that her life no longer concerned him. Whenever her name surfaced in old documents or at social functions, he became busy with another conversation. He had heard rumors that she worked with housing rights groups. Once, an associate mentioned seeing her in Port Harcourt. Another time, someone said she was living in Accra. Tunde had never checked. Now, a girl who slept on the street was standing in his boardroom, wearing the necklace he had once fastened around Ibiwari's neck, and speaking of her death as though it were ordinary news. "When did she die?" he asked. 18 months ago. "From what?" "Kidney failure, complications from hypertension, and maybe from carrying too many things alone for too long." "That is not a medical answer." "It is the answer I have." Tunde's face changed. Kesanre saw it and looked away, not out of pity, but because grief could become another form of power when it belonged to a rich man. People rushed to comfort it. They made room for it. Poor people buried their own dead and returned to work before the soil settled. Tunde picked up the envelope she had placed on the table. It was brown, softened at the corners with his full name written in blue ink. Babatunde Alade. He recognized the handwriting before he broke the seal. For a moment, his thumb refused to move. Inside were 3 things. The first was a photograph. Ibiwari stood beneath a corrugated roof, thinner than he remembered, her hair streaked with grey. Beside her was Kesanre, perhaps 19 in the picture, wearing a school blouse and holding a stack of exercise books. Behind them were wooden houses raised on stilts above dark water. The second item was the first page of a land acquisition file for Abassi Waterside. The third was a folded note. Tunde opened it. "Tunde, if Kesanre is standing before you, then every lawful door we tried has remained closed. Do not help her because she carries my necklace. Do not listen because you think she may belong to you. Listen because your company never listened to people who had nothing it needed except their land. Ask for file AM 17044. Ask why the beneficiary accounts repeat. Ask why dead residents signed compensation forms. And when they tell you, I stole from you, ask who benefited from your anger. Ibiwari." The room became smaller. Tunde read the note again, then a third time. His eyes returned to one sentence. "Do not listen because you think she may belong to you." He looked at Kesanre. "How old are you?" 23. His face revealed the calculation before he could hide it. Kesanre gave a dry laugh. "There. That is the first thing men like you always calculate." "What does that mean?" "You are asking whether I am your daughter." "Are you?" "No." The answer came too quickly for him to trust. "How can you be certain?" "Because my mother's name was Salome Ekanem. My father was Nsikak Ekanem. I have a birth record, church baptism record, and 2 people who knew both of them." "Then why did Ibiwari raise you?" Kesanre's hand closed around the strap of her bag. She raised me because my mother died after your first project came to our community. Tunde's eyes went to the land file. Abassi, Waterside. Yes, we have never completed a project there. You started 20 years ago. People died before you pulled out. That is not what happened. You mean it is not what was written in the report you signed? Tunde stepped away from the table, his voice lowered. Be careful. Careful? Yes. Kesanre pointed at the glass wall. Beyond it, hundreds of employees moved through a building bearing his name. You have security downstairs, lawyers upstairs, drivers outside. You sleep behind gates. I slept under a church staircase last night, with my bag tied to my waist. Please tell me, sir, between the two of us, who has spent more time being careful? The door opened before Tunde could answer. Morenik Sani entered in a navy suit, her round glasses resting low on her nose. She had served as group legal director for 6 years and had learned to read a crisis before anyone explained it. Her eyes moved from Tunde to Kesanre, then to the open envelope. Sir, the project partners are waiting. Chief Oladepo has called twice. Cancel the meeting. Morenik paused. The marina announcement? Cancel it. That will trigger questions. Let them ask. Tunde pushed the land file towards her. Find file AM 17044. Morenik did not touch it immediately. What am I looking for? Repeated beneficiary accounts. Compensation forms signed by dead residents. Anything connected to Abassi Waterside. Her gaze sharpened. The current acquisition? The original file. 20 years ago, Kesanre spoke. And the current one? They are using the old signatures to claim people consented again. Morenik looked at her for the first time as if she were more than a security problem. What is your name? Kesanre Ekanem. How did you obtain this document? It belonged to Ibiwari Temuno Alade. Morenik's expression changed, but only slightly. Tunde noticed. You know the name, he said. Of course. No, you reacted. Morenik removed her glasses and cleaned them with a folded cloth. It was what she did when buying time. I saw her name in an archived litigation memo when I joined the company. What memo? A threatened civil claim. It was never filed. Get it. Sir, we have a major transaction today. Get everything. Morenik put her glasses back on. And what should I tell Chief Oladepo? Tell him nothing. That was the first mistake Tunde made that morning. He assumed that silence inside a company remained silent. By the time Moraike reached the legal archive, Chief Oladepo Alade already had a still image from the security footage on his phone. The picture showed Kesanre turning at the gate. The necklace was visible. Oladepo sat alone in the rear seat of his Mercedes and enlarged the image until the pendant filled the screen. For the first time in many years, his steady fingers trembled. He called the project director at Abassi Waterside. Why has the demolition not begun? The man sounded confused. Sir, mobilization is for Monday. The community received 7 days' notice. Move it forward. To when? Tomorrow morning. Sir, legal may object. Legal will receive the revised safety report tonight. Tell the contractor there is an emergency risk of structural collapse. That report does not exist. It will. Oladepo ended the call and stared again at the necklace. Ibiwari, he murmured. Even from the grave, you still refuse to rest. Back in the boardroom, Tunde asked Kesanre to explain how she had become homeless. She did not begin with the demolition. She began with her mother's dialysis. People like one dramatic reason, she said. They want to hear that one fire burnt everything, or one wicked landlord threw us out. Real life is not always like that. Sometimes you fall through 10 small holes before anybody calls it a disaster. Her adoptive mother, Ibiwari, had been sick for years. At first, she managed her blood pressure with medication. Later, her kidneys began to fail. She still worked, writing reports for civil society groups, and helping communities prepare petitions. But the hospital bills consumed what little she earned. Kesanre left college during her second year. "I told myself it was only one semester," she said. Then one became two. They moved from a two-room flat to a single room, then to a cheaper room. When Ibiwari died, Kesanre discovered 3 months of unpaid rent and debts owed to a pharmacy. She found temporary work serving food at events, entering survey data, and helping a land consultant organize files. The work came and went. Then the current Abassi waterside residents received notice that the area would be cleared for Meridian Crown Marina. Kesanre returned to the community to help families copy documents and record claims. While she was there, thieves broke into the room where she was staying. They took her small phone, her cash, and the plastic folder containing her national identity slip and school records. Without the documents, she could not complete onboarding for a new job. Without the job, she could not pay rent. Without an address, replacing some documents became harder. For 3 weeks, she slept wherever she found space: a church veranda, a market stall after closing. 2 nights in the corridor of a government hospital until security chased her away. Tunde listened, but his mind kept returning to Ibiwari. Why did she never contact me? Kesanre looked at him for a long moment. She did. She wrote letters. I received nothing. She sent documents to your office. Nothing reached me. She came here once. Tunde frowned. When? 11 years ago. Security said you were in a meeting. She waited 6 hours. Then Chief Oladepo came downstairs and told her that if she cared about me, she should stop trying to destroy the company. Tunde sat down slowly. You were there? I was 12. I sat on that pavement outside and did my homework. He remembered that day, not Ibiwari, not the child. He remembered Oladepo entering an afternoon meeting late and saying there had been a disturbance downstairs involving an unstable woman. Tunde had not asked who. A knock came. An office nurse entered with a first aid box. Kesanre allowed her to clean the scratch but refused an injection because she was not told what it was. The nurse explained it was not an injection, only antiseptic spray. Then say that first, Kesanre replied. People have a right to know what you are putting on their body. Tunde watched her. Even exhausted, she demanded explanation. She asked before agreeing. She did not treat authority as truth. Ibiwari had been the same. When the nurse left, Tunde said, You cannot return to the street. Kesanre stiffened. I have a guest apartment near the office. You can stay there temporarily. It is secure. No, you need somewhere to sleep. What I need is for the demolition to stop. I cannot stop a legally approved project because you brought me 1 copied page and a personal letter. So the necklace was enough to bring me upstairs, but not enough to make you investigate. I am investigating. You are offering me a bed. Both things can happen. And when the cameras find out, your company will announce that the compassionate CEO rescued a homeless girl. Meanwhile, your bulldozers will move before sunrise. Tunde's frustration rose. What exactly do you want from me? A written suspension of all site activity for 14 days. An independent review of the compensation register. Public access to the list beneficiaries. A meeting with elected residents, not the people your contractor selected. That is not a small request. Neither is removing a community. The land is classified as unsafe. Some parts are unsafe. Other parts became unsafe because drainage channels were blocked during previous works. You seem to know a great deal. I studied estate management and community development before poverty interrupted my education. The words were not bitter. That made them worse. Tunde called Morenik. Prepare an internal instruction suspending mobilization at Abassi waterside for 72 hours, pending document review. Morenik answered after a brief pause. I need to confirm authority under the project company structure. I am Group's CEO. The project vehicle has delegated authority to the steering committee. Chief Oladepo chairs it. Tunde's expression hardened. Draft it anyway. Yes, sir. Kesanre adjusted her bag. 72 hours is not 14 days. It is what I can do now. It is what you are willing to do now. She walked towards the door. Where are you going? To tell the residents that the CEO who signed away their homes needs more time to decide whether their evidence is worth reading. Kesanre. She stopped. Tunde held out a business card. My direct number. She stared at it. You think a woman sleeping outside has a phone? He lowered his hand. For the first time that morning, the humiliation belonged to him. Morenik spent the next 2 hours inside a restricted digital archive. The company's current system contained clean copies of every document connected to Abassi waterside. Too clean. She searched the old reference number from Ibiwari's letter. File AM17044 existed, but its index listed only 28 pages. A legal memo from 19 years earlier referred to 73 pages. 45 pages were missing. She checked the compensation register. 182 households appeared as paid. 37 payments had gone into only 4 bank accounts. She cross-checked names with publicly available death records and old community minutes. At least 9 supposed recipients had died before the payment date. Morniki leaned back in her chair. A junior lawyer knocked. Ma, Chief Oladepo is asking why the marina announcement was cancelled. Tell him the CEO is unwell. The lawyer hesitated. But he is in the building. Then tell him I said nothing. When the junior lawyer left, Morenik opened the litigation memo bearing Ibiwari's name. The first line read, Potential claim by former director of social design regarding unlawful displacement, diversion of rehabilitation funds, and retaliatory dismissal. At the bottom was a handwritten instruction. Close file, no external correspondence. Chairman's authority. The signature was Oladepo's. Morenik took out her phone, then stopped. Calling Tunde could leave a record on company systems. She printed the pages instead. As the printer began to move, the lights in the archive went off. Not the whole floor, only the archive. Morenike stood still in the darkness. Then she heard the electronic lock click behind her. Morenik pulled the handle. The door did not move. She switched on her phone torch and called facilities. No signal. The archive was in the basement, where reception was poor even on a good day. She tried the internal intercom. Dead. For several seconds, she listened. A faint movement came from the corridor. Hello? No answer. She knocked hard. This is Monik Sani. Open this door. Silence. She stepped back and studied the frame. The lock was electronic, but the door opened inward. A red emergency release box sat beside it, sealed behind thin plastic. She struck the plastic with the heel of her shoe, reached in, and pulled the lever. Nothing happened. Someone had disabled the emergency release. That frightened her more than the darkness. Morenik took pictures of the printed pages and saved them to an encrypted folder on her personal phone. Then she slid the originals beneath her blouse and tucked them into the waistband of her skirt. She had spent most of her career telling executives to remain calm during crisis. Now, with sweat collecting beneath her collar, she understood how useless that advice sounded when someone else controlled the door. She began striking it with the fire extinguisher. The third blow brought a voice. Ma? It was the basement cleaner. Mrs. Sani, get security. The door is locked. 5 minutes later, the lock released. A facilities officer apologized repeatedly, blaming a system fault. Moranik did not argue. She stepped into the corridor and saw a man turning at the far end. Grey suit, heavy shoulders, one of Chief Oladepo's personal assistants. She recognized his walk. He did not look back. Moreniki went straight to Tunde's office. He was on the phone with the project director. "What do you mean, the steering committee overruled the suspension?" The director's voice came through the speaker. "Sir, the chairman says the structural risk is urgent. He has circulated an engineering report." "Who commissioned it?" "I do not know." "You are the project director?" "Yes, sir." "Then how can you not know?" Morenik closed the office door and placed the printed memo on Tunde's desk. He read the first page while still listening to the call. His face changed. "Do not move a single machine," he told the director. "Sir, mobilization has already begun." "To where?" "Equipment is leaving the contractor's yard tonight." Tunde ended the call. Morenik described what she had found. The repeated accounts, the dead beneficiaries, the missing pages, the old litigation memo, the disabled archive lock. Tunde picked up the handwritten instruction. "Oladipo closed this?" "That appears to be his signature." "He was managing director then, and you were chief executive." The words were quiet. Tunde looked up. Morenik did not soften them. "I need to ask you something, sir. Did you know Ibiwari had raised these allegations?" "I knew she accused the project team of mishandling resettlement funds." "Did you investigate?" "My uncle said an internal audit found no diversion." "Did you read the audit?" "I read the summary." "Who prepared the summary?" Tunde already knew the answer. "Oladepo's office." Morenik sat opposite him. "What happened to Ibiwari after that?" "She was suspended." "By whom?" "By me. And the allegation that she stole money." "There were transfers linked to a consultancy account she had authorized." "Did the money enter her personal account?" "No." "Did she explain the consultancy?" Tunde's eyes shifted to the city outside. "She said it was a community trust account." "Was it?" "I did not confirm it." "Why?" His voice sharpened. "Because my marriage was falling apart. My first major project was close to collapse. Investors were threatening to leave, and every document on my desk said she had acted without approval. Every document provided by the same office that wanted the file closed." "You think I do not understand that now?" "I think understanding it now will not protect anybody tomorrow morning." Morenik placed her phone on the desk and showed him photographs of the archive pages. "We need external copies. We also need a court order. Your internal instruction may not be enough. Call our outside counsel. Our outside counsel represents the company. If the company may be implicated, privilege and conflicts become complicated. Then find independent counsel. For you or for the affected residents." The question caught him. For both. That is not always possible. Tunde paced once across the office. "Find someone for the residents first?" Morenik nodded. "I know a public interest lawyer, Barrister Amina Danjuma. She has sued this company twice." "Will she take my call?" "No, but she may take Kesanre's." They found Kesanre at Abassi waterside, shortly before sunset. The road ended before the community did. From there, narrow planks and packed earth led between homes built from timber, blocks, zinc, and years of repair. Children moved around buckets placed beneath leaking roofs. Women smoked fish over metal drums. Men returned from the lagoon with nets coiled inside wooden boats. The air carried salt, smoke, diesel, and open drains. Tunde had seen the community from project photographs. The photographs had been taken from above. From above, houses became shapes. People became numbers. Water became blue space, marked for commercial development. On the ground, everything had a name. A woman called Mama Ebi shouted at a boy for playing too close to the water. A tailor worked beside a window with no glass. A mechanic had arranged spanners by size on a piece of old cloth. Near the community hall, residents were copying identification documents and writing household details into exercise books. Kesanre sat at a plastic table, helping an elderly man press his thumb onto an ink pad. She saw Tunde approaching and stood. Every conversation around them stopped. "You brought lawyers?" she asked. Mornik answered, "I brought evidence that your concern is credible." Credible? It is a legal word. It is also a comfortable word. Mornik accepted the rebuke. "We found repeated bank accounts and missing archive pages. We need to seek an urgent injunction tonight." Kesanre turned to the residents. An old woman pushed forward. "This is the man?" she asked. Tunde nodded. "My name is Babatunde Alade. I know your name. It is on the paper tied to my door." She held up a notice with a red mark. "I am Comfort Effiong. I have lived here 31 years. Your paper says I collected 8 million naira. Show me the bank where I collected it." Tunde took the notice. "I will investigate." "You people always investigate after the machine has broken the house." Another man raised his voice. "My father's name is on the list. He died in 2013. They said he signed in 2024. People began speaking at once. "My room number is wrong. They counted 3 families as one. The meeting they wrote about did not happen. They told us to sign attendance, then used it as consent." Moraik lifted both hands. "One person at a time. We need statements with dates and copies of documents." A young man laughed bitterly. "Madam, when we brought statements to your office, security poured water on us." Kesanre stepped onto a low bench. "Listen, shouting will not help Barrister Amina file the case. We need structure." The crowd quietened because she had been working with them for weeks. She pointed to different tables. "People with payment alerts go to the blue table. People whose names appear as paid but received nothing go to the yellow table. If the listed person is dead, bring any burial record, church program, obituary, or witness who knew the date. Do not hand over your only original. We will photograph it and return it." Tunde watched her organize the room. She did not promise victory. She did not say the CEO had come to save them. She explained that an interim order might delay demolition, but would not settle ownership. She warned that inaccurate claims could weaken stronger ones. She told residents not to invent figures simply because the company's figures were false. "Truth does not become stronger because we add to it," she said. "Give only what you can defend." Morniki looked at Tunde. "That girl should be in law school. She was studying estate management. Then she should finish." Tunde lowered his voice. "Do not turn her into a project." Moreniki almost smiled. "I was about to tell you the same thing." Barrister Amina arrived after dark in a dusty Toyota. She wore a plain black dress, carried 2 laptops, and greeted Tunde without warmth. "So the lion has discovered the forest contains people. I did not ask you here for insults." "No, you asked because your own legal department cannot clean what it may have helped bury." Morenik stepped between them. "We need the order before morning." Amina studied the documents. "The court will ask why this is urgent now. Because they moved the demolition forward," Kesanre said. "Proof?" A resident produced a video showing low-bed trucks carrying excavators along the access road. Amina nodded. "We will ask for an interim injunction based on procedural irregularities, disputed compensation, lack of adequate notice, and risk of irreparable harm. But understand this. A judge may refuse without clearer title records." "What about the dead beneficiaries?" Tunde asked. "That strengthens the fraud question. It does not automatically decide land rights. Can we stop them? We can try." Kesanre leaned over the table. "What do you need?" "Affidavits. The original notice. Evidence of occupation. the current project documents, and somebody with standing. I have lived here. You are currently homeless, and your name is not on the household register. Kesanre's face tightened. Amina continued. That does not make your interest unimportant. It makes the legal route more specific. We need residents directly listed. Comfort Efyung raised her hand. Use my name. Another resident joined. Then another. By 10 o'clock, 12 affidavits were ready. Tunde's phone kept vibrating. Ola Depot, board members, investors, the governor's infrastructure aid. He ignored them until a message appeared from his uncle. You are allowing an unstable girl to manipulate you with Ibiwari's jewelry. Come home before you disgrace yourself. Tunde stared at the message. Kesanre noticed. He knows about the necklace. Did you tell him? Yes. No, then somebody sent him the gate video. Tunde called Bamidele. Preserve all security footage from this morning. No deletions, no copies released. Bamidele hesitated. Sir, the chairman's office requested the footage earlier. Who approved it? Group administration. Preserve the access logs. Yes, sir. Tunde ended the call. Kesanre's expression said what she did not need to speak. The company had been leaking before she crossed its gate. At midnight, Amina filed the urgent application electronically. At 12:20, a court clerk acknowledged receipt. At 1:15, the contractor's equipment reached the outer road. At 2, rain began. The rain came hard, beating roofs and turning paths to mud. Families moved mattresses away from leaking corners. Children slept in clothes because nobody knew whether they would need to run at dawn. Tunde offered again to take Kesanre to the guest apartment. This time, she agreed on conditions. Morenik drafted them on her laptop. Temporary emergency accommodation. No confidentiality obligation. No waiver of claims. No restriction on legal consultation or media contact. No use of Kesanre's name or image by Alade Meridian without written consent. Tunde read the document. This is excessive for one night. Kesanre answered, People who have been cheated by paper learn to use paper. He signed. The guest apartment was on the 11th floor of a serviced building in Victoria Island. It had 2 bedrooms, white sheets, air conditioning, hot water, and a refrigerator filled with drinks. Kesanre stood in the middle of the sitting room, unable to move. Tunde misread her silence. If you need anything, the caretaker is downstairs. She walked to the window and looked at the city lights. This place is empty? Yes. How much does it cost each month? That is not relevant. It is relevant to me. Tunde gave a figure. Kesanre turned. That is more than 20 families here spend on rent. This is not the time. That is always what rich people say when the numbers embarrass them. Tunde exhaled. You think having money makes every choice immoral? No. I think money allows people not to see the cost of their choices. He moved towards the door. Barrister Amina will call when the judge responds. Kesanre touched the pendant. Did you love her? Tunde stopped. The question had come without accusation. Yes. Then why did you not listen? He looked down at his hands. I thought love meant knowing the person. When the documents contradicted what I believed, I trusted the documents because they looked objective. But somebody prepared them. I know that now. No. You knew it then. You only trusted the person who prepared them more than the woman you married. Tunde met her eyes. You sound exactly like her. I spent most of my life with her. He opened the door. She hated air conditioning this cold, Kesanre added. A memory struck him. Ibiwari walking through their old bedroom at midnight, switching off the air conditioner, saying Lagos already had enough people trying to freeze Africa out of itself. Tunde left without answering. Kesanre locked the door, checked every window, and placed a chair beneath the handle. Then she entered the bathroom. She had not stood beneath a proper shower for 12 days. The first touch of hot water hurt the scratch on her arm. She leaned against the wall while dust and sweat ran down the drain. She tried not to cry. Not because of Ibiwari. Not because of the coming demolition. She cried because the clean towel smelled of soap, and she had forgotten how quickly safety could make the body admit it was tired. She slept for less than 2 hours. At 4:30, a loud knock woke her. "Maintenance," a man called. Kesanre sat up. Nobody had mentioned maintenance. She did not move. The knock came again. "Madam, there is a water leak from your unit." She checked the bathroom. Dry. Her phone was gone, but the apartment landline sat beside the bed. She called the caretaker. No answer. The door handle moved. Kesanre picked up the heavy lamp from the bedside table. "Who are you?" "Maintenance." "What is your name?" Silence. Then the man said, "Open the door, or we will use the master key." Kesanre stepped back and dialed Tunde's number from the business card she had kept. He answered on the third ring. "What happened?" "There are men outside." "What men?" "They say maintenance. They are trying the door." Tunde was already moving. "Do not open. Call police. I do not know the emergency code from this landline." "Dial 112. She did. The line connected, but before she finished giving the address, the lock clicked. The chair shifted. 2 men pushed the door inward. Kesanre screamed. The first man reached for her bag. She swung the lamp. It struck his shoulder and shattered against the wall. The second man grabbed her from behind. She drove her heel into his shin, twisted, and bit his wrist. He cursed. The first man recovered and slapped her so hard that her vision flashed white. "Take the necklace," he shouted. "Not the bag, not money, the necklace." Kesanre understood. She closed both hands around the pendant. The second man reached for her throat. Then the corridor filled with a siren. The men released her and ran. One used the stairwell. The other pushed past a uniformed response officer coming from the lift and escaped through the service passage. Kesanre stood against the wall, shaking, one palm bleeding from broken glass. The necklace remained around her neck. Tunde arrived 15 minutes later wearing trousers, an open collar shirt, and no jacket. He had driven himself. He found Kesanre seated on the floor while a police officer photographed the damaged door. Her cheek was swelling. "What did they take?" "Nothing." "Then why?" "They came for the necklace." Tunde looked at the broken lamp, the displaced chair, and the blood on her hand. Something inside him settled into a colder shape. This was no longer an old marital wound. Someone was afraid of what the necklace represented. By 6 in the morning, the police had taken statements. The building's main corridor camera had stopped recording at 4:22. The service camera had been turned towards the wall. The caretaker claimed he had been asleep and knew nothing. Morenik arrived with Amina. Amina examined the door. "You cannot keep her here," Tund replied. "I will move her to my house." Kesanre stood. "No, you were attacked. Exactly. Whoever did this knew where your company placed me. My house has better security. Your family also has access." Silence followed. Morenik said, "She is right." Tunde looked at her sharply. "Find an independent, safe place," Morenik continued. "Not company property. Not disclosed to internal staff." Amina offered a protected apartment used by her legal organization. Kesanre agreed. Before they left, Amina's phone rang. She listened, thanked the caller, and ended the call. "The judge has scheduled an emergency hearing for 9:30. "Did he issue a temporary order?" Tunde asked. "Not yet." Kesanre checked the time. "The machines will begin before then." They did. At 6:43, the first bulldozer engine started at Abassi waterside. The sound traveled across the water like thunder. By the time Tunde's vehicle reached the edge of Abassi waterside, Dawn had only begun to color the sky. The bulldozer stood behind a line of police officers and private security men. Its blade was raised. 2 excavators waited farther back on transport trucks. Workers in reflective jackets moved around the equipment, checking fuel lines and shouting over the engines. Residents poured from the lanes carrying bags, cooking pots, mattresses, school uniforms, framed photographs, and whatever else their hands could hold. A child was crying because he could not find one shoe. Comfort Effiong stood in front of her house with both arms spread. "You will pass through me first," a police officer shouted through a loudspeaker. All residents must comply with the lawful evacuation notice. Do not obstruct authorized personnel. Kesanre pushed through the crowd. Where is the court order authorizing demolition? The site manager pointed to a laminated document. Government clearance. That is an environmental access permit. It is not a possession order. You are not a lawyer. No, but I can read. The site manager turned away. Tun stepped forward. Switch off every machine. The man froze when he recognized him. Sir, I have written instruction from the steering committee. I am the group CEO. Yes, sir, but this project is under Meridian Crown SPV. The chairman has delegated authority. I am withdrawing that authority. You cannot do it verbally, sir. Tunde moved closer. Then treat this as notice that I will hold you personally responsible for every structure damaged after this moment. The contractor's representative joined them. Mr. Alade, mobilization costs are running. We have police support and a safety report stating that the structures present imminent risk. Mornick held out her hand. Show me the report. He gave her a copy. She scanned the first page. This engineer resigned from the consulting firm 6 months ago. That is not my concern. It will become your concern when you explain why you relied on a report dated yesterday and signed by someone who no longer works there. The man looked uneasy. Behind them, residents began chanting, "No notice, no demolition, no payment, no demolition." Kesanre climbed onto a wooden crate. Everybody listen. The chanting slowed. Do not throw stones. Do not touch the machines. Record everything from a safe distance. Parents, keep children behind the community hall. People with elderly relatives, move them to the church compound. If police give an instruction, ask for the legal basis, but do not fight. A young man named Edet shouted, "They will destroy us while we are asking questions." Kesanre pointed at the phones raised around them. If you fight, they will show only the fight. They will not show the papers. Do not give anybody an excuse to call us violent. Tund watched her calm people who had every reason to be furious. He had attended leadership programs in London and New York. Consultants had taught him crisis communication, stakeholder management, and conflict de-escalation. Kesanre did it with no microphone, no title, and no promise that she could win. A police commander approached. Mr. Alade, with respect, your family disagreement is not our operational matter. We have instruction to maintain order. This is not a family disagreement. Then bring a court order. Amina checked her phone again. The hearing has started remotely. The judge is reviewing the affidavits. How long? Tunde asked. As long as the court requires. The bulldozer operator lowered the blade. Kesanre ran towards the line. Tunde caught her arm. Do not. That is Mama Comfort's house. You told everybody not to approach the machine. I know. Then follow your own instruction. The operator looked towards the site manager. The manager lifted one hand. Morinik stepped directly in front of the blade. The operator stopped. Tunde stared at her. She did not turn. If that machine moves, she called, I will name the contractor, the project company, every director who authorized it, and every insurer attached to this site, in an emergency application before noon. The contractor's representative cursed under his breath. "Madam, move. No. You are company legal director, which means I understand exactly how expensive your next 30 seconds can become." For the first time, the residents laughed. It was not joy. It was the sharp laughter of people watching power become uncertain. Then a black Mercedes entered the site. Chief Babatunde Alade stepped out wearing a cream agbada, polished shoes, and an expression of patient disappointment. He looked at the crowd as if they were children delaying an important journey. "Tunde," he said. "What is this? What have you done?" Oladepo sighed. "I have protected a project you are allowing Greece to sabotage. You moved demolition forward. Because the structures are unsafe, you manufactured the report. That is a reckless allegation." Morenik handed him the page. The listed engineer no longer works for the firm. Oladepo barely glanced at it. Administrative error. 37 compensation payments entered 4 accounts. Tunde said. 9 dead people signed forms. The older man's eyes narrowed. "This is not the place. It became the place when you sent machines." Oladepo lowered his voice. "You are humiliating yourself over a street girl carrying stolen property." Kesanre heard him. She stepped closer. Oladepo looked at the necklace and for one brief moment lost control of his face. Kesanre saw recognition. "You know it," she said. "I know what it resembles. No, you know it." Oladepo turned to Tunde. "She has manipulated you exactly as Ibiwari did. Sentiment, accusation, public drama. That woman nearly destroyed your life once. You closed her litigation file. I prevented a bitter former spouse from blackmailing the company. You intercepted her letters. I protected you. From my wife? From weakness." The word hung between them. Oladepo's voice became softer. "You were 34 years old. Banks were ready to pull out. Contractors had not been paid. Your wife had opened unauthorized accounts and moved project funds. I kept the company alive. The account was a community trust. That is what she claimed. Did you investigate?" "I did what was necessary." Tunde stared at the man who had raised him after his father died. Oladepo had paid his university fees. He had guaranteed the first company loan. He had sat beside Tunde's mother in hospital. When Tunde and Ibiwari fought, it was Oladepo who listened, advised, and reminded him that great men could not allow private emotions to ruin public duty. Now every memory felt contaminated. Amina called out. "The court has issued an interim preservation order." She held up her phone. "All demolition, removal, or interference with occupied structures is suspended for 7 days pending hearing. The order has been served electronically on the project company, contractor, police legal unit, and local authority." The residents erupted. The site manager stepped back. Oladepo raised his hand. "An electronic copy is not service on site." Amina faced the police commander. "Your legal unit has acknowledged receipt. Check your phone." The commander moved aside and called someone. The bulldozer engine continued running. Comfort Effiong began to pray aloud. The police commander returned. "Switch off the equipment." For a second, nobody moved. Then the entire community exploded in shouts. Women embraced. Men lifted their hands. Children who did not understand the legal order shouted because the adults were shouting. Kesanre did not celebrate. She knew 7 days was not victory. She looked at Oladepo. He was watching her with an expression that contained no surprise now, only calculation. "You think a temporary order changes ownership?" he asked. "No," Kesanre replied. "It changes what you can destroy before people are heard." Oladepo turned to Tunde. "The board will meet at noon." "Good. You may not enjoy the agenda. Neither will you." The boardroom at Alade Meridian had seen arguments over debt, acquisitions, delayed projects, labor disputes, and political risk. It had never seen Babatunde Alade arrive carrying evidence against the man at the head of the table. 12 directors attended in person or by video. Oladipo sat in the chairman's seat. Tunde remained standing. Morenike distributed copies of the compensation anomalies and litigation memo. Oladipo did not deny that irregularities existed. He reframed them. Large community acquisitions produce imperfect records, he said. Names change. Accounts are shared. Informal settlements rarely maintain reliable documentation. We cannot treat every discrepancy as fraud. Director Ifeanyi Chukwuma adjusted his tie. 37 payments into 4 accounts is not ordinary discrepancy. It may reflect payment agents. Where are the agency agreements? Morenike asked. We will find them. Tunde leaned forward. Why were 45 pages removed from file AM 17-044? Archive migration. Why did you order Ibiwari's claim closed? She had a conflict of interest. Why were her letters blocked? Oladipo looked around the table. You are watching a grieving man reopen a failed marriage and drag this company into it. We should respond with discipline, not theater. Tunde's hand struck the table. This company used the names of dead people to support compensation records. And you signed the original acquisition approvals. The room fell silent. Oladipo pushed a folder towards the directors. Inside were copies of Tunde's signatures. Project Authority. Community Engagement Summary. Release of Resettlement Funds. Final Compliance Certification. Oladipo spoke calmly. If there was wrongdoing 20 years ago, the CEO cannot pretend he stood outside it. Babatunde approved the structure. He received the reports. He signed the certifications. Tunde looked at the pages. He had expected betrayal. He had not expected his own handwriting to feel like evidence from a stranger. Director Chukwuma asked, Did you review these documents before signing? Tunde answered honestly. The summaries, not the attachments? No, did Ibiwari raise concerns directly with you? Yes. And you rejected them? Yes. A director joining from London spoke. Then this is not merely a chairman issue. It is a governance failure involving the chief executive. Oladipo sat back. For the first time that day, he looked satisfied. Tunde could have defended himself. He could have said he was young. He could have said Oladipo controlled information. He could have said the company would have collapsed if he had delayed. All of those things contained some truth. None changed the signatures. I did not steal the money, Tunde said. But I signed papers I did not question, and I punished the person who asked me to question them. That is not innocence. The words moved through the room more powerfully than denial would have done. Morenike looked at him. Oladipo's satisfaction disappeared. Tunde continued. I am proposing 4 immediate actions. First, an independent forensic audit led by a firm with no prior relationship to Alade Meridian. Second, preservation of all records, including personal devices used for company business. Third, suspension of current site activity until the audit and court review. Fourth, voluntary disclosure to the relevant financial and anti-corruption authorities. Several directors began speaking at once. You will destroy the company. The lenders will panic. We need legal advice. This is premature. Oladipo raised his voice. I move that Babatunde Alade be suspended as Group CEO, pending assessment of his fitness and conflict arising from his former wife's allegations. Tunde looked at his uncle. You prepared this before the meeting. I prepared for the possibility that you would choose emotion over duty. Director Chukwuma asked for a vote. The board council explained that Tunde could remain in the room, but could not vote on his own suspension. 5 directors supported suspension. 4 opposed. 2 abstained. Oladipo held the casting vote as chairman. The motion passed. Just before 2 in the afternoon, Babatunde Alade ceased to be acting chief executive of the company bearing his name. His access card was deactivated before he reached the lift. Employees watched from behind glass as he carried his own files through the lobby. The receptionist from that morning lowered her eyes. Outside, reporters had gathered. Someone had leaked the board meeting. Questions struck him from every side. "Mr. Alade, were you removed because of fraud? Is the homeless woman your secret daughter? Did your ex-wife steal company funds? Are you admitting illegal demolitions?" Tunde stopped. Moreniki whispered, "Do not make a full statement without counsel." He nodded. Then one reporter shouted, "Did the girl steal the necklace?" Tunde turned towards the cameras. "No." The crowd quietened. "She'd not steal it. Kesanre Akanem is not under investigation by me, and no member of my office has authority to accuse her of theft. Any claim that she is a criminal is false. Who is she? A witness who deserves protection. Is she your daughter? No." The answer created fresh shouting. Tunde continued before anyone could interrupt. "And her lack of relation to me does not reduce the seriousness of what she has raised." That sentence traveled farther than he expected. By evening, millions of people had watched the clip. Some praised him. Some called it damage control. Some asked why a young woman needed a dead rich woman's necklace before a CEO would hear her. That last question followed him home. Kesanre spent the afternoon at Amina's protected apartment giving a formal statement about the attack. Gozi Mba arrived after sunset. He was lean, observant, and carried a canvas document bag held together with 2 repaired straps. He introduced himself as an investigative reporter. Kesanre did not invite him to sit. "How did you know where I was?" "Amina called me." Kesanre looked at the lawyer. Amina said, "Ibiwari trusted him." Gozi opened his bag. "I met Auntie Ibi 6 years ago. She gave me documents about Abasi Waterside and 2 other acquisitions." "Why did you not publish?" "Because what she had proved irregularity, not the full chain of criminal responsibility. The bank records were incomplete. Key witnesses withdrew. One disappeared." "Disappeared?" "Left the country, according to his family. I could not confirm where." Kesanre folded her arms. "So you kept the story. I kept investigating. People kept losing homes." "Yes." His answer carried no defense. That made her listen. Gozi removed a sealed plastic sleeve. Inside was an unopened envelope addressed to Tunde. "Ibiwari gave me this shortly before she died. She said to release it only if Tunde ever chose to investigate." Kesanre stared. "What is inside?" "I do not know. You did not open it?" "It was not addressed to me." Kesanre almost laughed. After weeks of people opening her bags, using her image, speaking about her, and deciding what was best for her, the simple respect for another person's sealed letter felt extraordinary. Tunde came to the apartment under escort from a private security company selected by Amina, not by Alade Meridian. He looked older than he had that morning. Gozi handed him the envelope. Tunde opened it with care. The letter was 8 pages long. Ibiwari had written it by hand. She described the first Abasi Waterside project. The company had planned a mixed residential and commercial development. Initial surveys identified over 200 households. A resettlement budget was approved. Ibiwari proposed a staged relocation, temporary accommodation, livelihood support for fish sellers and boat operators, and a community trust to receive funds transparently. Oladipo opposed the cost. He argued that many residents lacked formal title and should receive only token assistance. When Ibiwari continued to object, payment records began appearing without her approval. She opened a temporary trust account with 2 community representatives to protect a portion of funds already released for livelihoods purport. Oladipo used that account to accuse her of diverting money. Tunde reached the 5th page and stopped. Kesanre watched his hands. What? He handed the letter to Moranik. A paragraph had been underlined. Tunde, the hardest truth is not that your uncle deceived you. It is that he chose a lie your pride was ready to accept. By then, you already resented the hours I spent in the community. You already suspected I cared more about strangers than about our home. When he placed the account documents before you, they did not create your judgment. They gave your judgment paperwork. Tunde sat down. For 20 years he had remembered himself as the husband betrayed by a secretive wife. Now memory rearranged itself. Ibiwari arriving home late, smelling of smoke from the waterfront. Her refusal to attend an investor dinner because a displaced woman had gone missing. Their arguments over money, Tunde accusing her of making him look weak before employees. Ibiwari saying, "You only call compassion disloyalty when it delays your ambition." The final page contained names. 3 company officers, 2 consultants, a local government official, and 1 man identified only as EM, finance clerk. Willing to confirm that beneficiary accounts had been replaced after approval. Gozi tapped the initials. Ezekiel Monday. He was the witness who left Nigeria. Can we find him? Morenike asked. I found his sister in Uyo last year. She said he is alive, but terrified. Tunde looked at Gozi. What would make him speak? Evidence that the company can no longer bury him. Amina's phone rang. She answered, listened, and slowly turned towards Kesanre. What is it? Kesanre asked. Amina placed the call on speaker. A police officer introduced himself. We need Miss Kesanre Ekonem to report to the station concerning a complaint of theft and extortion. Tunde stood. I publicly stated no complaint came from me. The officer replied. The complainant is the Alade Family Heritage Office. The allegation concerns jewelry belonging to the family estate and a demand linked to stopping a commercial project. Oladipo had changed the weapon, not company property, family property, not a misunderstanding, extortion. Amina asked, Do you have an invitation in writing? It has been sent. We will attend with counsel tomorrow. The officer paused. Miss Ekonem should come tonight. No, if she refuses, a warrant may be requested. Amina ended the call. Kesanre's face was still. Tunde said, You are not going. Yes, I am. They will detain you. If I hide, they will call me a fugitive. We can challenge it. We will challenge it from there. Amina shook her head. Voluntary attendance does not guarantee release. Kesanre picked up her bag. I have spent weeks being chased from places because people think not having an address means not having a name. I will not run now that they finally wrote my name on paper. At the station, the desk officer took the necklace as evidence. Kesanre refused to remove it until Amina photographed the item, the clasp, the scratch across the pendant, and the evidence label. Write the condition, she insisted. The investigating officer frowned. Madam, we know our work. Then documenting it should not offend you. Amina hid a smile. The officer recorded the scratch. Tunde offered to provide a surety immediately. The police declined, saying the complaint involved conspiracy and property of substantial value. At 11:40, Kesanre was placed in a holding cell. By midnight, a news website published the headline, Homeless Scammer, Arrest for Using CEO, Stared Ex-Wife to Demoned Millions. The article included details from her police statement that had not been made public. It claimed she had invented the demolition allegations after learning about Tunde's failed marriage. It described her as uneducated, though she had attended college. It called the necklace stolen before any court had examined ownership. By morning, strangers were debating whether Kesanre looked honest enough to be believed. Oladipo appeared on television outside a charity event. He spoke gently. "This is a painful family matter. We must have compassion for vulnerable young people who may be influenced by activists. But compassion cannot excuse criminal conduct." Inside the cell, Kesanre heard the interview from an officer's phone. One detainee looked at her. "Na you dem dey talk about?" Kesanre rested her head against the wall. "Yes." The woman nodded towards the television sound. "That old man fear you." Kesanre closed her eyes. "For what?" "For wetting, you know." That was when Kesanre understood the purpose of the arrest. It was not only to punish her, it was to change the question. Instead of asking whether hundreds of residents had been cheated, the public would ask whether one homeless woman had stolen a necklace. A whole community could disappear behind one accusation. She opened her eyes. "Please," she said to the detainee, "when they bring paper for you to sign, ask them to read it aloud first." The woman laughed. "You still dey advise person inside cell." Kesanre gave the smallest smile. "That is how Auntie Ibi raised me." Kesanre spent the night sitting upright because the cell floor was wet near the wall. At 6 in the morning, an officer brought a statement for her to sign. The statement said she had received the necklace from an unnamed person and used it to gain access to Tunde. "That is not what I said." The officer tapped the page. "It is the summary. It is a different story. Sign first. Your lawyer can correct later." Kesanre pushed the paper back. "No." The officer's face hardened. "You people learn small English and begin to make trouble." Kesanre looked at the women around her. "Please read the statement aloud so everybody can hear what I am refusing." "Are you teaching me my work?" "No, I am protecting my name." The officer took the paper away. 2 hours later, Amina arrived with a magistrate's release order. The police delayed another 3 hours, claiming paperwork had not been processed. Gozi waited outside with cameras from several news organizations. When Kesanre finally emerged, reporters crowded around her. "Did you steal the necklace? Are you Tunde Alade's daughter? How much money did you demand? Were you sleeping in the CEO's apartment?" Kesanre raised one hand. The questions slowed. "My name is Kesanre Akanem. The necklace was given to me by Ibiwari Tamuno Alade before she died. I did not demand money for myself. I asked for a pause in demolition and an independent review of compensation records." A reporter interrupted. "Why should anyone believe you?" Kesanre looked directly into the camera. "You should not believe me because my clothes are torn. You should not disbelieve me for the same reason. Look at the records. Ask why dead people signed forms. Ask why 37 payments entered 4 accounts. Ask why the demolition date changed after I entered the CEO's office." That clip went farther than the scandal headline. At Abassi Waterside, residents played it on phones. In offices, people argued over it during lunch. Law students began downloading the court filings. Estate surveyors pointed out that informal occupation did not erase the need for due process. Others attacked Kesanre, calling her an opportunist. But the question had returned to the documents. Oladepa's attempt to reduce a community to a necklace had failed. Tunde met Kesanre at Amina's office. He expected anger. She gave him a list. "What is this?" "Things the residents need before the next hearing." The list included certified copies of project approvals, the full compensation schedule, minutes of consultations, the names of payment agents, the environmental report, and the relocation plan. Tunde read it. "I no longer have internal access. You still know who does. Moronique has been placed on administrative leave. Then your company is preserving evidence by removing the person who found it." "I know." Kesanre sat down. Her wrists bore faint red marks from the handcuffs. Tunde noticed them. "I am sorry." For which part the arrest? You did not sign the complaint. My name made it possible. That is closer. He accepted the answer. I will file an affidavit confirming the history of the necklace and Ibiwari's ownership. Good. I can also state that I authorized no theft complaint. Good. I want to pay for your legal costs. Amina's organization is representing me. They need funding. Then donate without attaching my case to it. Tunde looked at her. You think everything I offer is a trap? No. I think rich people are used to turning guilt into generosity. Generosity feels better because the giver remains in control. What would responsibility look like to you? Give evidence, even if it damages you. He nodded slowly. That is what I am trying to do. Then continue. Moranik entered carrying a small suitcase. She had gone home after being suspended and found company representatives waiting to collect her work laptop. Before surrendering it, she had made no copies. Doing so after a legal hold could create complications. But months earlier, as part of routine governance review, she had sent an archive index to the board's external compliance portal. The index showed that file AM 17044 once contained 73 pages. Can we get the missing pages? Amina asked. Maybe from the off-site storage vendor. The old physical archive was digitized 12 years ago. Records marked for destruction were supposed to be scanned first. Who had authority over destruction? Group administration. At the time, Chief Oladipo chaired the records committee. Tunde rubbed his forehead. Everything returns to him. Not everything, Moranik said. Some things return to you. He looked at her. You approved a records disposal policy that allowed the committee to destroy supporting material after 10 years. I did not know this file was included. That is the problem we keep meeting. Tunde's jaw tightened, but he did not argue. Gozi called from outside the room. He had located Ezekiel Monday. The former finance clerk was living in Cotonou under another surname. He would not return to Nigeria. He would speak only if his face and location were concealed. Independent lawyers were present, and the interview was recorded in a way that could later be authenticated. Amina said, a media interview alone may not be enough for court. It can identify documents and lead us to bank records, Gozi replied. Tunde asked, what does he want? Protection for his family, and proof that Oladipo no longer controls the company's response. He still chairs the board. Then remove him. That requires votes. Kesanre spoke. Find them. For the next 3 days, the struggle moved through courtrooms, board calls, newspaper offices, and community lanes. Amina obtained an extension of the preservation order for another 21 days. The judge directed the project company to produce compensation records and proof of consultation. The company submitted over 2,000 pages. Quantity was used as fog. Kesanre, Moranik, volunteer law students, and community representatives divided the pages. They built a table: name, household number, payment amount, account number, date, signature or fingerprint, occupation status, supporting document. They marked contradictions in red. One beneficiary appeared as both deceased and present at a consultation meeting 2 years later. 11 fingerprints were visually identical. A payment agent had collected funds for 42 households, though no authorization forms were attached. Several women listed as dependents were household heads who operated businesses. An entire lane had been omitted from the relocation map. Moranik explained why that mattered. If they are not on the map, they are not counted. If they are not counted, they are not paid. Once the houses are gone, proving occupation becomes harder. Kesanre looked at the printed map. Then, before any machine returns, we map every structure ourselves. Residents used phone cameras, measuring tapes, notebooks, and publicly available satellite images. Estate surveyors volunteered on weekends. Each household received a numbered record. Photographs were time-stamped. Occupants signed or marked statements in the language they understood. Kesanre insisted that nobody pay to be included. When one volunteer demanded 5,000 naira from a widow, she removed him from the team. We cannot fight one corrupt list by creating another. Tunde visited, but did not lead. At first, residents stared at him. Some insulted him. One man refused to shake his hand. Tunde did not leave. He spent an afternoon carrying some boxes of copied documents from the church hall to Amina's car. The work was ordinary and hot. Nobody photographed it until a child took a short video. The clip showed the former CEO sweating through his shirt, while Mama Comfort ordered him to hold the box properly. It went viral. People praised his humility. Kesanre disliked the comments. One afternoon carrying paper and everybody says he has changed, she told Gozi. Women here have carried water for 30 years. Nobody writes about their humility. Gozi closed his laptop. Public attention likes symbols. Symbols can become another way of avoiding the work. True, but they can also keep the case visible. Kesanre looked across the hall at Tunde. He was listening while an old fisherman explained how a blocked channel had reduced the catch. Then use the symbol, she said. Just do not confuse it with justice. The off-site storage vendor responded to a court-backed preservation request. 12 boxes connected to the old acquisition had been scheduled for destruction 5 years earlier. 11 were destroyed. One had been misplaced after a warehouse flood and later moved to a recovery section. Morenik, Amina, and a court-appointed representative attended the opening. Inside were mold-stained files, payroll records, engineering drawings, and a sealed binder labeled Community Rehabilitation Accounts. The binder contained copies of payment instructions. Transfers approved for individual residents had been redirected to 4 corporate accounts. The receiving companies shared directors with an entity called Coastal Facilitation Services. One director was Oladepo's former driver. Another was the wife of the local government official named in Ibiwari's letter. The third identity was false. At the back of the binder was an internal memo from Ezekiel Monday. It stated that he had been instructed to replace beneficiary account details after community verification. The instruction came from the office of the managing director. Oladepo. Tunde read the memo in Amina's conference room. The evidence was strong. It was not yet complete. Oladepo could argue the memo was fabricated, or that subordinates used his office without authority. Then, Gozi returned from Cotonou with a recorded interview. Ezekiel appeared in shadow, his voice slightly altered for public release. For legal preservation, a separate unaltered recording was witnessed by 2 lawyers and a notary. He described receiving spreadsheets from Oladepo's personal assistant. He had objected. He had been told the changes reflected payment agents selected by community leaders. When he asked for authorizations, he was threatened with dismissal. Later, after Ibiwari began asking questions, Ezekiel copied the instructions. He saw Oladepo's assistant remove documents from her office. He also saw a draft audit revised before it reached Tunde. "Why did you leave?" Gozi asked on the recording. "Because a man followed my daughter from school." "Who sent him?" "I cannot prove." "Why speak now?" Ezekiel was silent for several seconds. "Because I told myself I was protecting my family. But every year another family lost a house, because people like me kept quiet." Tunde closed his eyes. Silence. Again, every road in the story seemed to return to silence. The board convened an emergency meeting after the binder and witness recording were disclosed to council. Oladipo arrived with 2 senior lawyers. He looked tired but controlled. "This evidence has not been tested," he said. "A frightened former employee and water damage documents do not establish criminal responsibility." Director Chukwuma replied, "They establish enough risk to suspend you." Oladipo turned to Tunde. "This is your revenge. No, you lost your position, so you have decided to burn the institution." Tunde looked around the table. This institution was already burning. We only kept the smoke away from this room. Oladipo laughed without humor. "You think these people will thank you? The residents? The press? That girl? When the company collapses and workers lose salaries, they will still call you a thief. Maybe. You will destroy your father's name. My father's name is not a defense to fraud. He built nothing. I built this with you, and you use that fact to make me afraid of questioning you." Oladipo's eyes became hard. "I paid your school fees when your mother had nothing. I know. I gave you your first office. I know. I stood beside you when Ibiwari left." Tunde's voice broke slightly. "You helped make sure she had to leave." The vote to suspend Oladipo passed 7-4. He was ordered to surrender access, devices, and records. He stood slowly. Before leaving, he looked at Kesanre, who attended as an observer under the court-directed stakeholder process. "You are pleased?" "No. You have taken a family disagreement and damaged thousands of livelihoods." Kesanre answered, "You keep calling it family because family shame sounds smaller than public theft." Security escorted him from the boardroom. There were no handcuffs, no dramatic confession, no applause. But for the first time in decades, Oladipo walked through the building without anyone rushing to open the door before he reached it. The next morning, regulators and financial crime investigators executed warrants at 3 company offices and the homes of 2 former executives. Oladipo's lawyers issued a statement saying he would cooperate fully and denied wrongdoing. The public treated the suspension as victory. Kesanre did not. She knew powerful men could remain powerful while cases dragged for years. She was right to be cautious. 2 days later, the court received a new engineering application. It claimed that recent rain had made 43 structures at Abassi Waterside immediately dangerous and requested permission for emergency removal. The supporting photographs showed cracks, leaning walls, and flooded foundations. Some were genuine. Others were taken from abandoned structures outside the occupied area. But the application mixed them together. The judge authorized removal of only structures certified by an independent engineer and required relocation support for affected occupants. Before the independent inspection could begin, contractors arrived at dawn with a list naming 68 houses. Oladipo had been suspended. The machinery still came. The system was larger than one man. The second demolition attempt began before sunrise on a Saturday. No television crew had been invited. No company executive was present. The contractor arrived with 2 excavators, a bulldozer, 4 trucks, private security, and a police unit told that dangerous buildings were being removed under court authority. Residents woke to engines. Kesanre's phone rang at 5:12. It was Mama Comfort. "They are here." Kesanre sat up on the mattress in Amina's safe apartment. "Have they marked the approved structures?" "They marked my house." "Did an independent engineer inspect it?" "Nobody entered here. Move your medicine and documents. Do not stand inside." Kesanre called Amina, Morenik, Gozi, and Tunde. Then she called Edet at the community. "Start the emergency plan. Children to the church. Record the vehicle plates. Nobody should touch the machines." By the time Kesanre reached Abassi Waterside, the first excavator had pushed through a row of empty fish-smoking sheds. The contractor claimed the sheds were abandoned and unsafe. Women shouted that they still used them every week. A site engineer carried a list stamped with the project company's seal. Kesanre compared it with the court schedule Amina had sent. The numbers did not match. This list has 68 structures. The application identified 43. Updated safety assessment, the engineer replied. Where is the independent engineer's certification? He is on his way. Then you cannot begin. We have begun. A private guard moved towards her. Leave the operational area. Kesanre held up her phone, recording. State your name and company. He reached for the phone. Edette stepped forward. Kesanre shouted, Do not touch him. Edette stopped. The restraint cost him. The guard shoved him into the mud. Young men surged from behind. Kesanre put herself between them. Anybody who fights will be arrested and the machines will continue. Cameras up. Hands down. The crowd obeyed with visible effort. Gozi arrived on a motorcycle, already broadcasting live. This is Abassi Waterside, he told the camera. Contractors are removing structures under an emergency order, but residents and council say the site list exceeds what was presented to court. The contractor's representative heard him and shouted for security to create a wider perimeter. Amina arrived next. She served the site supervisor with a formal notice disputing compliance. He refused to sign receipt. She placed the papers at his feet while Gozi filmed. Service does not disappear because you refuse a pen, she said. Tunde reached the site without an escort. The police commander blocked him. Mr. Alade, you are no longer authorized to control the project. I am not here as chief executive. I am here as a director and a witness to disputed records. You must remain behind the line. A scream came from the inner lane. An excavator had struck the front wall of a block room. The structure was listed as unoccupied. It was not. Mama Comfort's older sister, Mrs. Anibiet, had entered to retrieve a bag containing insulin and blood pressure medicine. When the wall shifted, part of the roof collapsed across the doorway. Mama is inside, Comfort screamed. The excavator operator stopped. Dust filled the lane. People ran. Police tried to hold them back, but panic broke the line. Kesanre reached the building first. The front entrance was blocked by timber and roofing sheets. She could hear coughing from inside. Mrs. Anibiet, a weak voice answered. My leg. Tunde came beside Kesanre. We need to lift this sheet. It may pull the rest down. A mason from the community examined the roof. Support that beam first. Men brought planks. There was no cinematic strength, no single hero lifting a house. They worked together, residents, workers, even 2 police officers, holding weight, clearing blocks, and making a narrow opening. Kesanre crawled through. Dust burned her throat. Mrs. Anibiet lay beside a fallen cupboard, one leg trapped beneath a timber beam. Her medicine bag was clutched against her chest. Leave the bag, Mama. No, they will steal it. Nobody will steal it. You cannot promise. Kesanre took the bag and tied it across her own body. Then she called through the opening. Her leg is trapped. We need a jack. The contractor had one in a service truck. For 30 seconds, nobody moved because the site supervisor had not authorized its use. Tunde seized the supervisor by the front of his reflective jacket. A woman is under that roof. Sir, release me. Bring the jack. The man looked at the cameras. He ordered a worker to get it. They raised the beam enough to pull Mrs. Anibiet free. As Kesanre helped her through the opening, another section of roofing shifted. Tunde pushed Kesanre forward. The sheet struck his shoulder and cut through his shirt. He fell to one knee. Residents dragged all 3 clear. An ambulance was called. Mrs. Anibiet's leg was fractured, but she was conscious. Tunde's shoulder required stitches. Kesanre's palms were scraped raw. Gozi's livestream had captured the entire rescue. including the moment workers hesitated to release safety equipment without permission. More importantly, it captured the site engineer, admitting that the independent assessor had not yet arrived. Amina turned to the police commander. The court conditioned removal on independent certification. There is none. Continuing is contempt. The commander looked at the injured woman, the cameras, and the document in Amina's hand. Then he ordered all machinery stopped. The site supervisor protested. The commander stepped closer. Switch it off. The engines died one by one. The silence was enormous. 20 minutes later, Morenik arrived with an electronic court directive issued after Amina's emergency filing. It suspended all work until an on-site review and ordered preservation of machinery logs, work lists, and communications. The contractor tried to remove the disputed list. Idet filmed a supervisor folding it into his pocket. Police seized the document. The independent engineer arrived after 7. He examined Mama Comfort's house. "It is not in immediate danger," he said. He examined the damaged room where Mrs. Anibiet had been trapped. The damage was caused by impact from the excavator. He reviewed the larger list. "I did not prepare this." "Whose signature is that?" Amina asked. "It resembles mine, but it is not my signature." A forged safety certification had been used after Oladepo's suspension. Investigators traced the document to the project director's office. The director claimed he received it from a consultant. The consultant denied sending it. Phone records showed calls between the director, Oladepo's former assistant, and a contractor executive the night before mobilization. That afternoon, financial crime officers arrested the former assistant and project director for questioning. Oladepo was invited to surrender the following Monday. He did not appear. His lawyers said he was receiving medical treatment. By evening, rumors spread that he had left Lagos. Tunde sat in a private hospital with his shoulder bandaged when Moreniki brought the news. He may be trying to travel. Can investigators stop him? They have requested an alert, but we do not know whether it is active. Kesanre stood by the window. He threatened me in the apartment before the first arrest. Tunde looked at her. What exactly did he say? That people disappear in Lagos every day. Why did you not tell me? I told Amina, it is in my statement. Tunde realized the question sounded like accusation. He corrected himself. I should have asked earlier. Gozi entered with his phone. Oladepo's vehicle was seen near the private aviation terminal. Morenik called the investigators. For the next 40 minutes, nobody in the hospital room spoke much. They watched unconfirmed messages move through social media. A photograph of a black SUV. A video of security officers at a gate. A claim that a charter flight had been delayed. Then official confirmation arrived. Oladepo had been stopped before boarding a flight to Accra. His lawyers argued he had a scheduled medical consultation and was not fleeing. Investigators detained him under a lawful warrant connected to suspected document falsification, diversion of resettlement funds, and interference with witnesses. The news reached Abassi Waterside before sunset. Residents gathered near the community hall. Some danced. Some shouted Tunde's uncle's name. One man brought out a bottle and wanted to pour drinks. Kesanre climbed onto the same crate she had used days earlier. Listen to me. The crowd slowly settled. An arrest is not a conviction. The money has not returned. The houses are not yet secure. Mama Anibiet is in hospital. Do not allow one man's arrest to make us stop doing the work, Ede called out. But today we can celebrate small. Laughter moved through the crowd. Kesanre smiled despite herself. Small. Then tomorrow bring your documents. They celebrated small. The Hahe people felt was not because an old man had been humiliated. It came from seeing that status had finally failed to place him beyond procedure. Oladipo spent the night in custody. His expensive agbada was replaced by a plain shirt brought by his lawyer. Cameras caught him entering a vehicle without the assistants who normally surrounded him. He did not confess. He did not beg. He maintained that all decisions had been made for legitimate commercial purposes, and that subordinates had mishandled implementation. The case would take time. Reality rarely delivered justice in one speech, but his access had been removed. His accounts connected to the disputed companies were frozen by court order. The project director and 2 consultants began seeking separate legal representation. Once powerful people stopped sharing the same defense, their stories began to contradict one another. The first consultant produced emails showing that Oladipo's office had asked for backdated community engagement reports. The project director produced voice notes in which Oladipo told him to clear the visible structures before the activists create permanent facts. The former assistant admitted forwarding the family theft complaint against Kesanre. He claimed Oladipo dictated it. Police records showed that details from Kesanre's statement had been sent to a public relations consultant before she was released. An internal investigation identified the officer responsible. The officer was suspended pending disciplinary proceedings. For Kesanre, that mattered. Not because one officer's suspension corrected the system, but because official power had used her private words to publicly brand her a liar. The consequence had to be recorded. 3 weeks later, the court ordered Alade Meridian to disclose the complete payment trail and prohibited demolition until a lawful resettlement framework was negotiated. The company's lenders demanded governance reform. The board appointed an interim chief executive from outside the Alade family. Tunde was not restored to office. Some shareholders wanted him back after his public cooperation. Others argued that cooperation after exposure did not erase 2 decades of weak oversight. Tunde told the board he would not seek reinstatement while investigations continued. He resigned as executive director, but retained a non-executive seat temporarily to support disclosure and settlement. He also placed a substantial portion of his shares into an independently administered compensation reserve. Kesanre heard the announcement on the radio. Mama Comfort clapped. He has done well. Kesanre continued sorting forms. He has started doing what he should have done. You do not praise anybody? I praise complete work. Mama Comfort laughed. Then nobody on earth will hear praise from your mouth. Kesanre finally laughed with her. The forensic audit took 4 months. Its findings went beyond Abassi Waterside. 3 projects had used related payment agents. Community consultation records had been copied across locations. A relocation consultant billed for temporary housing that was never built. Not every discrepancy was theft. Some came from poor record-keeping, shared family accounts, spelling variations, and residents without formal identification. That distinction mattered. Moranik insisted the report separate proven diversion, unsupported payments, administrative errors, and unresolved claims. Calling every error corruption may sound powerful, she said, but it makes the accurate allegations easier to attack. Kesanre carried that lesson into the community sessions. They corrected their own register when evidence changed. One household that claimed no payment later found that an elderly uncle had collected money without informing the family. Another name thought to be fictitious belonged to a woman whose surname had been entered incorrectly. Truth became stronger, not because it was simple, but because they allowed it to remain complicated. At the criminal hearing, prosecutors presented the recovered binder, bank trails, emails, witness testimony, and the forged engineering certification. Oladipo was granted bail under strict conditions after several weeks in custody. Some residents were furious. They released him because he is rich, Idet said. Amina explained that bail was not acquittal. The question is whether he will appear, interfere with witnesses, or obstruct the case. We can oppose bail with evidence, but detention is not supposed to become punishment before trial. Idet shook his head. If it was me, would they explain all this? Probably not, Amina said. That unfairness is another problem. We do not fix it by demanding unlawful treatment for everybody. Kesanre remembered the wet cell floor. Justice was not making a powerful man suffer every indignity poor people suffered. Justice was removing the indignity from the system. The compensation process began under court supervision. Every claimed household received a case number. Payments could not pass through informal agents without written authority. Documents were explained in English, Yoruba, Pidgin, and local languages used by residents. People who could not read were allowed an independent witness. A public dashboard listed approved payments by case number, not full personal details, so the community could track progress without exposing bank information. A grievance panel included lawyers, surveyors, women traders, youth representatives, and disability advocates. Tunde attended the first meeting. He sat in the back. Nobody placed his name on the program. Kesanre noticed that he did not attempt to speak. For once, he had come only to listen. The negotiations did not save every house. That was one of the hardest truths Kesanre had to explain. An independent environmental study found that part of Abasai waterside sat in a severe flood risk corridor. Several structures had been built across drainage paths. Wastewater contamination had reached dangerous levels in 2 sections. Keeping everybody exactly where they were would have sounded compassionate, but it would have left families exposed to another kind of harm. The residents did not accept the findings immediately. They said unsafe before, Mama Comfort argued. They used it to lie. Yes, Kesanre replied. That is why this study must be tested, not automatically rejected. The community hired its own technical reviewer using funds from the legal support reserve. The reviewer confirmed most of the flood findings, but challenged the proposed relocation boundary. After weeks of survey work, the boundary was reduced. Nearly half the households could remain during upgrading. Others would move in stages, not all at once. Temporary accommodation had to be ready before any structure was removed. Families with fishing livelihoods would be relocated near water access, not sent to distant estates where their work became impossible. Women who operated smoking sheds received business restart grants. Renters, who had been ignored in the first compensation plan, received relocation support even when they did not own structures. Households without complete identity documents were allowed to prove occupation through school records, utility receipts, market association records, neighbors' testimony, and dated photographs. Not every claim succeeded. Some people arrived after the dispute became public and tried to register empty sheds as homes. Kesanre refused them. A man offered her money to add 3 names to the list. She reported him to the grievance panel. You could have collected it quietly, Edit joked after the man was removed. Kesanre stared at him until he raised both hands. I am joking. That is how corruption becomes normal, she said. Everybody calls the first small thing a joke. Idet nodded. Point taken. The education work grew beyond the case. Amina's organization started weekly sessions in the church hall. How to keep copies of tenancy records. How to verify what a document says before signing. How to record a meeting without provoking violence. How to identify the difference between compensation, relocation assistance, and livelihood restoration. How to complain when a public officer refuses service. How to replace lost identity documents. How to protect children and elderly people during an eviction threat. Kesanre became one of the facilitators. She never presented herself as a lawyer. When she did not know an answer, she said so and referred the question. That honesty built more trust than pretending expertise. Morenaik arranged a paid internship for her with an independent land, rights, and urban planning institute. The first offer came through Alade Meridian's foundation. Kesanre rejected it. The second came through an organization selected by Amina, with no publicity condition and no reporting line to Tunde. She accepted. She also returned to school. Registration was not simple. Her records had to be reconstructed. Fees had accumulated. She had been away long enough that some modules had changed. Tunde offered to pay everything. Kesanre asked that any support pass through a general scholarship program open to other displaced students. "You still do not want to owe me," he said. "I do not want a private favor to become the reason people think I deserved education." "You did deserve it. So do others." The scholarship fund eventually supported 12 students from communities affected by the company's past projects. Kesanre was one of them, not the face of the program. The company's public relations team proposed using her photograph in the announcement. She refused. They used a photograph of an empty classroom instead. One afternoon, 6 months after the first demolition attempt, Tunde asked Kesanre to meet him at the old Alade family house in Surulere. She nearly declined. Amina advised her to take someone. Kesanre arrived with Gozi. The house was smaller than she expected. It belonged to Tunde's late mother and had remained mostly unchanged. Family photographs lined the sitting room wall. One showed Tunde and Ibiwari on their wedding day. They were both young. Tunde wore a cream suit that looked too large at the shoulders. Ibiwari was laughing at something outside the frame. Kesanre stood before the photograph. She looked happy. She was. For how long? Tunde considered the question. Longer than I remembered. Shorter than she deserved. He brought out a wooden box. Inside were letters, dozens of them. "I found these in my uncle's private storage after investigators searched the family office." The envelopes bore Ibiwari's handwriting. Some had been opened. Others remained sealed. Dates covered 13 years. Tunde touched the first one. "I have not read all of them. Why? I do not know whether reading them is for her or for me." Kesanre sat opposite him. "She wrote them for you. She also stopped sending them, because nobody answered." He nodded. "I wanted you to see these before they go to the evidence archive." Kesanre picked up one envelope addressed in faded ink. The return address was the room where she and Ibiwari had lived when she was 9. She remembered the table. Ibiwari would wait until Kesanre slept, then write under a rechargeable lamp because electricity had gone again. "What did she say about me?" Tunde asked. Kesanre placed the letter back. "Sometimes she was angry. I expected that. Sometimes she defended you." That surprised him. "She said you were not born cruel. She said power trained you to treat interruption as disrespect." Tunde looked away. "She also said you loved buildings because they stayed where you put them." "People did not." A broken laugh escaped him. "That sounds like her. She did not spend every day talking about you. I need you to know that." He looked back. "Why?" "Because grief can make a person imagine he remained the center of someone else's life. She built another life. It was difficult, but it was hers." Tunde absorbed the correction. "Thank you." He then looked at the necklace around Kesanre's neck. "I wanted to ask about that." Kesanre's fingers touched the pendant. "What about it?" "It was made for Ibiwari. I thought perhaps it should remain with the family." Kesanre's expression cooled. Tunde raised a hand. I am not claiming ownership. She gave it to you. I know that. I was asking whether you would consider allowing me to buy it. No. The answer came without anger. Tunde nodded once. I understand. No. I do not think you do. She removed the chain. For the first time since Tunde saw her at the gate, the pendant lay in her open palm. This necklace opened your door. That is useful. But it also proved something ugly. What? If I had come without it, security would have thrown me onto the road and you would have entered your meeting. Tunde said nothing. If I had been only Salome Ekanem's daughter, would you have stopped? I cannot answer honestly and say yes. That is why it should not return to a private jewelry box. Kesanre had already made a decision. The new Community Legal and Learning Center at Abassi Waterside was nearly complete. It would carry two names, Salome Ekanem and Ibiwari Tamuno. The necklace would be placed there in a secure display with copies of the first land petition, the corrected community map, and a simple history of the case, not as a symbol of Tunde's lost marriage, as evidence of how access to power worked. Tunde listened, then he nodded. That is where it belongs. The center opened 3 months later. It was not a grand building. It had a legal desk, 2 classrooms, document scanners, locked storage cabinets, accessible toilets, a small solar backup system, and a notice board listing current land and housing procedures. A plaque beside the entrance read, "A home is not only walls and roof. It is safety, memory, livelihood, and the right to be heard." Inside, the necklace rested behind clear glass. Under it were the words, "This necklace did not prove that one life mattered more. It proved how long powerful people can refuse to listen." People came expecting Tunde to give a speech. He did not. Mama Comfort spoke about losing trust in documents and learning to create records the community could defend. Amina spoke about lawful process. Morenique spoke about governance and why internal legal departments must never become machines for approving what executives already want. Gozi spoke about evidence, verification, and the danger of publishing a story before it can survive challenge. Kesanre spoke last. She wore a simple blue dress and no jewelry. "Many people have called me brave," she began. "I do not always feel brave. That morning at the company gate, I was hungry. I had not slept well. My sandal was broken. When the guard held my arm, I was afraid. The room became quiet. Courage is not the absence of fear. Sometimes it is having one document left and refusing to let somebody tear it." She looked towards the residents. "This center is not here to teach people how to fight every development project. Communities also need roads, drainage, safe housing, schools, and jobs. It is here to teach that development done without people is only removal with expensive language." Tunde sat at the back. Kesanre continued. "Do not sign what you do not understand. Do not hand over your only original. Do not add lies to a true complaint because you think the truth is not dramatic enough. Do not allow anger to push you into violence when somebody is waiting to use your anger as evidence against you." Her eyes moved towards Tunde. "And when somebody enters your office wearing dirty clothes, do not first ask what powerful person they know. Ask what happened." The applause rose slowly, then filled the room. Tunde did not stand. He clapped with everyone else. The criminal proceedings against Oladipo continued for more than a year. Several counts were amended as evidence developed. 2 defendants entered plea agreements and agreed to testify. The court convicted 1 consultant of falsifying records. The project director pleaded guilty to using a forged safety certificate and obstructing the preservation order. Oladipo denied authorizing theft and intimidation. Eventually, the court found him guilty on charges related to conspiracy falsification of corporate and compensation records, and unlawful diversion of funds. He was acquitted on one witness intimidation count, because the evidence did not establish the required link beyond reasonable doubt. Some people were disappointed by the acquittal. Amina reminded them that justice was not strengthened by pretending weak evidence was strong. Oladipo received a custodial sentence and financial penalties. Assets traced to the payment companies were ordered recovered through separate proceedings. The judgment did not repair every life. Salome did not return. Ibiwari did not hear her name cleared in court. Families who had spent years in unstable housing could not recover childhoods, health, or lost businesses from a bank transfer. But the record changed. The official record now stated that community funds had been diverted, that consultation documents had been falsified, that Ibiwari's warning was not the bitterness of a failed wife, that Kesanre had not stolen the necklace. That mattered because lies become history when nobody corrects the file. Tunde appeared before shareholders after the judgment. He did not ask to return as chief executive. He supported changes requiring independent review of large displacement projects, direct board access for whistleblowers, public disclosure of resettlement frameworks, and conflict of interest rules for family-controlled committees. He sold one of his luxury properties and added the proceeds to the remediation reserve. Critics called it image repair. Perhaps part of it was. Human motives are rarely clean. Kesanre did not require perfect motives before accepting useful reform. She only required that reform be measurable. How many claims have been paid? How many remain? How many displaced families entered temporary housing before removal? How many complaints were resolved? Who audits the numbers? Whenever Tunde spoke in moral language, she brought him back to data. He began to appreciate it. One evening, nearly 2 years after the morning at the gate, Tunde visited the center without notifying anyone. A class was in progress. Kesanre stood before a whiteboard, explaining the difference between an attendance sheet and a consent form. Your presence at a meeting does not automatically mean you agreed to every proposal, she told the group. But read the heading before you sign, because sometimes one paper is presented as another. Tunde waited outside until the class ended. Kesanre found him by the necklace display. You came alone. I am learning. What do you need? He smiled faintly. You always ask that as if I am another claimant. Everybody comes with something. I came to return this. He handed her a thin folder. Inside was the original design sketch for the necklace. Ibiwari had drawn the 2 hands and small house. Beneath it, she had written the words later engraved on the back. No home is truly built until every life inside it is respected. Kesanre looked at the sketch for a long time. Where did you find it? Among the letters. She opened the display case with the center administrator's key and placed the sketch beside the necklace. Tunde watched her close the glass. I spent years thinking I lost Ibiwari because she betrayed me, he said. Then I thought I lost her because my uncle deceived me. Both stories allowed me to remain innocent, and now I think I lost her because when truth became inconvenient, I asked whether she was loyal instead of asking whether she was right. Kesanre leaned against the display. That is probably closer. Do you think she would forgive me? I cannot speak for a dead woman. The answer hurt, but it was honest. Kesanre added, she wanted the records opened. You helped open them. That does not rewrite what happened between you. I know. You ask, what to do now? Yes. She looked towards the classroom, where residents were stacking chairs. Next time somebody without clean clothes enters your office, listen before asking what they want from you. Tunde nodded. And after listening, check the evidence. he laughed softly. Of course. They walked outside. The upgraded drainage channel ran along the main path. Some original houses remained, reinforced and connected to sanitation lines. Farther away, new low-rise housing blocks stood on safer ground. They were not mansions. There were complaints about water pressure, maintenance fees, and allocation delays. Life had not become perfect. That was another sign the change was real. Children played football beside the center. Mama Comfort sold smoked fish from a new stall. Edette worked with the community mapping team and still argued too loudly during meetings. Morenik had left Alad Meridian to build a governance advisory practice. She trained legal teams to recognize when protecting an organization required confronting its leaders. Gozi's investigation won awards, but he continued visiting because the implementation story mattered more than the scandal that attracted cameras. Amina kept filing motions whenever deadlines slipped. Kesanre completed her degree with strong results and began postgraduate training in housing policy and land administration. Nobody made her a CEO. Nobody discovered that she was secretly wealthy. She did not marry into the Alade family. Her victory was more demanding than a fairy tale rescue. She recovered her name. She finished her education. She helped people create systems that did not depend on the mood of one powerful man. And Tunde learned that redemption was not a moment when the public applauded him. It was the discipline of surrendering control, correcting records, paying what was owed, and remaining present after the cameras left. Some people will say Tunde was also a victim because his uncle deceived him. I do not see the story that way. Deception explains part of his failure. It does not erase responsibility. He had authority to ask questions. He had a wife asking him to investigate. He had reports prepared by people with interests in the outcome. He chose the version of events that protected his ambition and his pride. What changed him was not discovering that Kesanre belonged to him. She did not. What changed him was discovering that a person should not need to belong to the powerful before her suffering becomes credible. That is the lesson of the necklace. It was valuable, but its gold was never the most important thing about it. The important thing was what happened before people saw it. A young woman stood at a gate with evidence in her bag. Her clothes were dirty, so people laughed. She had no address, so people treated her as if she had no identity. She had no title, so people assumed she had no knowledge. Only when a rich man recognized something around her neck did the doors open. Respect should have opened those doors first. A human being does not have to be a CEO's daughter, a billionaire's relative, a useful witness, or the owner of an expensive object to deserve safety and attention. Dignity is not a reward for people who can prove their value to us. It is where every honest conversation should begin.